Mr. Mayor, I can confirm you are live streaming.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the resumption of the special council meeting for August 12th, 2024. To those who are on the Zoom link waiting for planning, we will be commencing planning in about 5 minutes or so. Thank you for your patience as we work through this. And as was noted at the start of the special council meeting, we are conducting this entire meeting virtually this evening as a result of the ongoing renovations of our audiovisual system in the council chamber. With that, I will go back to the items arising from caucus, and I'll turn to the clerk for any recommendations coming from that. Okay, so the first motion that we have is pertaining to section 239 sub 2 sub C, DSD report 2024-356 pertaining to land acquisition, and there is a recommendation there. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, as previously noted, I declared a conflict on this item due to myself and family owning property in close proximity to this item.
Okay, so we will ensure that the resumption of the meeting minutes reflects that as well. Can I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Stretch, do I have a seconder? Councillor Deneau, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then I believe there's one more recommendation, Madam Clerk. And this is, I believe this is the item that we received an email on earlier today, correct? Madam Clerk?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor. The matter is arising from a June in-camera meeting.
Yes, and the resolution to an OLT matter, specifically related to COR 2024-308. Somebody care to move that? Moved by Councillor O'Dooney, seconded by Councillor Davey. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried as well. Motion for 3 readings of the bylaws, moved by Councillor Schneider, Councillor Deneau, thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And motion to adjourn the council meeting, moved by Councillor Chapman and Councillor O'Dooney. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And with that, Madam Clerk, can we move straight into planning, or do we need a gap?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can go ahead and proceed directly into the planning meeting now.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to you, Councillor Singh. You're muted, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome everyone for the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for August the 12th. Before us, there are consent items. Can I get, my apologies, let me ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Seeing none, can I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor O'Dooney. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And then to our scheduled items. So just to specify the terms for delegates, to all delegations, while public participation is welcome to meetings, we are committed to engaging in a respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manner may result in an immediate removal from the meeting, and that's interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillor, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council This is council's time to really listen, reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Council is appreciative of the willingness of all residents' engagement, but where possible, any questions being asked by council should be scoped to the, specifically the discussion related to the consideration of the rental replacement bylaw as proposed. Okay, this may have been from an earlier item, but I mean, we'll take it to the same terms. Anyways, first up is item 6.1, which is the zoning bylaw amendment for 75th First Avenue. And before we get started, I want to again remind everyone that this is a formal public meeting to consider application under the Planning Act. If a person or public body does not make oral, written submissions to the City of Kitchener before the proposed applications are considered, the person or public body may not be entitled to appeal a decision of, to the Ontario Land Tribunal and may not be added as a party to a hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal. So once more, 75 First Avenue, the DSD 2024-342. Mr. Bateman, I think you're presenting first. Whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Can everyone hear me all right?
Yep, we hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. Good evening, Chair, committee members, and residents. My name is Brian Bateman. I am a senior planner with the City of Kitchener, and I've been tasked with reviewing this zoning bylaw amendment application from Jason Dale, the owner of the property. And I'm very pleased to bring forward a planning report recommending approval of a ZBA from Res 4 to Res 5 with site-specific amendment 404. That would allow for a 6-unit multiple with 5 parking spaces. Next slide, please. This is a slide giving an aerial overview of the subject and surrounding property. The 75th First Avenue is highlighted on the red arrow. It's located with frontage onto First Avenue. It's a fairly big city lot. It has 20 meters of frontage and an area of 810 square meters, so pretty large as city standards go. It's currently a duplex dwelling, and they're wanting to add 3, possibly 4 additional units to this property. It is located in the Vanier area. It is a mix of land uses here. As you can see from the aerial photo, if you look at Connaught Place immediately to the south, you'll see that there are townhomes, and then backing onto this property are on Second Avenue. There are, it may not be so apparent, but there are semi-detached 3-story walk-ups. So definitely a mixed use, low-rise area. And it's very close to Wilson Park in the Kingsdale Community Center, to give it a little more context. Next slide, please. So this is the conceptual site plan of the property. You can see the existing 2-story house, and the proposed addition is off the rear of the property. It's approximately 3 stories in height. And they also have 5 surface parking areas or surface parking spots. This is for the 6 dwelling units being proposed. The next slide will give it a little better perspective. Here's a building rendering of the property. You can see I've pointed to the existing dwelling and then the proposed 3-unit addition. You'll see it fits in pretty seamlessly with the property, and you can also sort of point out or see the surface parking spaces along the side and rear of the property. Next slide, please. To facilitate the plan for the property, it does need a zoning bylaw amendment, and as I've mentioned, it's currently zoned Res 4. Res 4 zoning does allow for multiples, but only up to 4 units. Since they're asking for 6, they need a new zoning category, and that's Res 5. So hence why they've asked for Res 5. And the site specific is really, 404 is really put in place because it tailors the development to the zoning. Next slide, please. So opportunity. This will most certainly facilitate a compact, compatible missing middle low-rise development within an established neighborhood that contains a mix of low-rise development. So it's most definitely a very compatible form of development that we are encouraging. It will support the development of 3 additional residential units with high quality living space to contribute to the city's and contribute to the city's inventory. It is located on a major bus route where both on and off-road cycling infrastructure is nearby, as well as Wilson Park. And from a policy perspective, it is consistent with provincial, regional, city policy direction. And also, I would add that the site is functional, the plan is functional, it's serviceable. So we are recommending approval of this application. Next slide, please. So we are recommending approval, staff is recommending approval of the application to change the zoning bylaw from Res 4 in bylaw 2019-051 to Res 5 with site-specific 404. And then just to kind of quickly go through what site-specific provision 404 will permit. So it'll permit a parking requirement of 0.8 parking spaces per dwelling unit, or 5 parking spaces for the 5 dwelling units that they're proposing. They're asking that the dwelling units located at the ground floor level to not have patio areas adjacent to the dwelling. They're asking for a minimum side yard setback of 1.28 meters. And this is really just to recognize the fact that it's an existing situation. A slight increase in floor space ratio. Zoning allows for 0.6, and they're asking for 0.63. They're asking for a minimum of 0 parking spaces, a minimum rear yard setback for the parking lot of 1 meter, a minimum side yard setback of 0 meters for the parking lot, and a minimum drive aisle width of 5.3 meters. No street line facade opening, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum of 20%. And I'll just maybe just note on that, the reason for that is the fact that the dwelling is existing at the front. So this is not a new build. So they can't meet that requirement that we would require with a new build. And lastly, the region has requested to prohibit geothermal wells, and I know we've seen that before from the region. So in conclusion, the zoning bylaw amendment demonstrates good planning principles and is consistent with provincial, regional, and city planning policies. Thank you very much, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bateman. If the committee can hold questions of staff, we do have one delegation. Mr. Miller, whenever you're ready.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Hi, Caleb. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
5 minutes to make a presentation whenever you're ready.
Yep, I'll keep this short and sweet. I represent Jason Dale, the landowner. My name is Caleb Miller. I'm a planner with GSP Group. We've had a chance to review the draft zoning bylaw provided by city planning staff, as well as public anonymous comments and the staff and agency comments from the region, from GRCA, and from other agencies that did provide comments throughout this process. We agree that development represents a great opportunity to create missing middle housing and contributes to the overall housing supply in the city. And just to emphasize again, too, that the zoning bylaw amendment, specifically the site-specific exceptions, are mostly requested to recognize the limited size of the site and to help with essentially achieving some of the design adjustments we've been making over the past couple of months in response to our ongoing conversation with the urban design staff at the city. So there's some, that's absolutely everything. We've had a chance to review the staff report as well and concur with their recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Miller. With that, I'll look to see if there are any questions of staff. Counselor Chapman. Oh, do you have, sorry, questions of the staff or delegation?
Well, I was thinking the delegation, but either could respond to it. I just, my question
Let's go
had,
to the delegations first. So it's just questions of delegations for the time being. Go ahead.
well, you didn't do a slide presentation, but staff did, but in one of the images, it showed the two buildings side by each, right? But is the addition being a 3-story addition or a 2-story addition?
Yes, Councillor, it's a 3-story addition matching the height of the existing front part of the building.
Okay, because in the image, it looked like 2 stories if you look at the windows and they matched with the adjacent property, the existing property.
Could staff have that picture up? The
Yeah,
clerk,
sorry if you could. Sorry, Councillor, you are correct. It is 2 stories. Yeah, the basement is where the location of the third unit is.
Oh, so it is only 2 stories.
Apologies, yes.
Okay, that's what well, that's what the image looked like, but then there's talk of 3 stories. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just here for comments, so I'll stick around.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. That's everyone. No more questions.
Thank you.
Again, I'll see the committee if there are any questions of staff. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to delegations. I'm sorry, comments. But before we go to comments, can I get a mover on the item? Okay, moved by Councillor Deneau. It's in his ward. Councillor Deneau, you're first up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to Mr. Miller for bringing this forward, and thank you to Brian. That area in which the extension or expansion is going to be built, it's a weird corner, but it's actually a perfect spot with regards to, as Mr. Bateman had said, with regards to trails. Kingsdale is probably a kilometer stone's throw down the road. There's a bus route right along Kingsway and on I can't remember the other street. Anyways, close to the expressway. It is close to grocery stores and not too far from the mall. So I think it's a perfect opportunity to increase some of that that middle missing stock. What I've seen over the last 10-12 years I've lived in that area, a lot of those properties along 2nd and 3rd and 4th and 5th, they're just ripe for additional dwellings and additional units, and I've seen lots of those occur over the last number of years, and so I think this is a perfect spot for some rentals. There's lots of stuff around, like I said, parks and trails and the community center, and so I'm in full support of this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Seeing no other comments, I'll just quickly make my own similar to you. I think this is a good development. This is the type of development we continue to seek out, which is the missing middle, low-rise development, which can proceed through development fast and even faster through the building process. Again, large projects, although can bring online multitudes or hundreds of units, they can take years and years before they actually allow people to move in. Whereas projects like these, hopefully next year, they may be families moving in. And that speaks substantive volumes towards our effort to improve the housing circumstance in our community, to make sure the housing is cheaper and having more options towards a housing stock. And these type of units create that diversity. The only comment I would make is I was going to plan on asking a question, but I'll forego it for now. But we need to take a look at seeing the process of the zoning application for projects like this, where it's a very soft zone change from a Res 4 to a Res 5. There's not a substantive change to what that property may look like or the number of units being added. But what we want to make sure is that individuals are not having to go through a prolonged zoning application process similar to something that, maybe 500 units plus. And that's something I think we need to put our minds together and make that process easier if you want to see these type of units being built faster. All right, with that, all those in favor? Opposed? And that item carries. Thank you. We'll move to item 6.2, which is the zoning bylaw amendment for Wilson Avenue, Cold Canada Corporation. We have both delegations and first presentation from our staff. Tim Seller, whenever you're ready, Tim.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you fine.
All right. Good evening, Chair, Mayor, and members of council. Before you is an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for the subject lands located at 1036, 1082, and 1094 Wilson Avenue to facilitate the construction of a new parking area at 1082 and 1094 Wilson Avenue that is in conjunction with a proposed new building expansion at 1036 Wilson Avenue. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the subject properties. As you can see, the existing Colt Canada facility is located at 1036 Wilson, with the properties at 1082 and 1094 Wilson Avenue located behind to the south of the main building. Next slide, please. As just shown, the properties are located on the east side of Wilson Avenue near the intersection of Wilson and Wabanaki Drive. They are also adjacent to the Grand River. The lands are located within a community area and are surrounded by employment uses, natural heritage areas, and low-rise residential uses. The properties at 1082 and 1094 Wilson Avenue contain 2 single detached dwellings that are currently vacant. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, the property has 3 land use designations. The existing building at 1036 Wilson Avenue is already designated general industrial employment, which is shown by the gray coloring. The green color is the lands that are designated natural heritage conservation. Those lands are not included with this application and will remain designated NHC. No development is permitted within the green NHC lands. The yellow area is designated low-rise residential. This is the area that contains the single detached dwelling properties and are subject to the official plan application to change the designation to general industrial employment, which is in line with 1036 Wilson Avenue. Next slide, please. On the screen now is a proposed concept site plan. For some context, the dark red is the existing Colt Canada facility. The pink and the purple areas are the proposed building additions. At the bottom of the image is the proposed new parking area. And as you recall, this is where the low-rise residential designation currently is on the lands. The proposed parking area will have approximately 110 parking spaces for employee use. Due to the grade of the property, the applicant is proposing a stairway, noted with that kind of pink square in the white at the bottom there, and a bridge access to the main facility. The stairway is located where an existing structure is on the site, and a proposed bridge crosses over the natural heritage area. The specific details of the parking and structures will be reviewed by staff as part of the site plan application that would be forthcoming. No site plan application has been submitted at this time. Next slide, please. Here's the summary of the proposed amendments before you tonight. To change the official plan urban structure designation from community area to industrial employment area, and the land use designation from low-rise residential to general industrial employment. These changes only pertain to 1082 and 1094 Wilson Avenue. We're also proposing to change the zoning designation from low-rise residential 1 zone, or Res 1, withholding provision 22H, to general industrial employment zone, EMP2, with site-specific provision 405. The site-specific provision will allow for a minimum parking rate of 1 parking space per 105 square meters for the manufacturing use, and 1 parking space per 50 square meters for the office use. A total of 127 parking spaces will be located on the properties combined. And I just wanted to reiterate again that no development will be permitted within the lands designated natural heritage conservation. Next slide, please. So we have an opportunity here tonight to redevelop an existing employment use by permitting a building expansion and parking relocation. This application will support the economic growth of the city and create more jobs. The application limits the development to only the small area that is not within the natural heritage conservation lands and protected environmental features. The application contributes towards a complete community. Next slide, please. So Overall, staff is recommending approval of the application that would permit the general industrial employment use on the property and permit the site-specific parking rate. The proposed applications represent good planning principles and are consistent with and conform to the provincial, regional, and the city's planning policies. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Councillor Michaud, we'll come back to questions of staff. We have a few delegations as well. That's okay. First up is Kirsten Baresdale. Kristen, whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Chair Singh. Can everyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I have to admit, I'm having a little bit of flashback syndrome doing a virtual meeting. I felt that things were getting back to normal, and now here we are again virtually. So hopefully we'll go off without a hitch. My name is Kristen Baresdale from GSP Group. We are the agents acting on behalf of the property owner with respect to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. I also want to note that Sean Cogden from Colt Canada is on the call if there are any particular questions related to Colt Canada's operations. Next slide, please. I'm just going to do a brief summary or overview of Colt Canada and how long it's existed at this site. Colt Canada is one of 5 companies in the Canadian Government Munitions Supply Program. Colt Canada works in collaboration with the Canadian Armed Forces and the National Department of Defense to design and to develop projects for soldiers and law enforcement agents. The existing facility right now wholly manufactures munition for the Canadian government as well as armed services. It has a long-standing history at its current location, starting in 1976, where it was formerly Demaco Inc. That was essentially then acquired by Colt Canada in 2005. But as I noted, they have been manufacturing firearms on the site since the mid-70s. Colt Canada's military customers, besides Canada, include the Netherlands, Denmark, UK, Norway, Botswana, Romania, and France. They also provide munition supply for law enforcement customers, including the RCMP, OPP, Toronto Police Services, and Vancouver Police. The current facility has approximately 50,000 square feet in size with approximately 159 employees. Just to touch on this, one of 5 companies in the Canadian Government Munitions Supply Program. Colt Canada is actually one of 3 companies that are located in the city of Kitchener. Magellan Aerospace is also located on 97.5 Wilson Ave, which is kind of kitty corner to the site. And IMT Group is located just around the corner on Manitou Drive. So it's quite a unique circumstance that we have this number of companies as part of that program located in Kitchener and located so close to one another. Next slide, please. I'll skim over this briefly as I think Mr. Seiler touched on it. The site, the existing facility is the property located at the top. And then you'll see 182 and 194 Wilson Ave located to the south. The air photo that you see right now depicts the existing housing or dwelling units that are on the site. And this area is also, you can see some of the area that's already been disturbed or developed or associated with those previous residential uses. The area is largely surrounded by existing employment manufacturing uses, with the exception of 3 existing residential uses to the east of the property. Next slide, please. Mr. Seiler touched on this development concept, so I won't get into too much detail beyond what he's touched on. As you can see, the entire expansion is intended to be accommodated as part of the existing property at 1036 Wilson Ave. It was determined that it made more sense to provide for buildings on the 1036 Wilson Ave and only providing for parking facility as part of the expansion on the lower Wilson Ave. It was less intrusive to provide for surface parking than it was to provide for a building expansion and relocation. As Mr. Seiler touched on, the red or the pink area, dark pink, is the existing facility. You'll see the area in purple to the north of the existing facility. That is proposed to be the future expansion of the warehouse and manufacturing area. And then the light pink along the front is intended to accommodate a new 2-story office. As I touched on earlier, the existing facility is roughly 51,000 square feet, and the proposed expansion will accommodate a new facility of approximately 110,000 square feet. The surface parking, which essentially will be taken over by the building expansion, has been accommodated on the other Wilson Ave sites below the property. And then there is a pedestrian bridge that is intended to connect the two services. As Mr. Seiler touched on, that bridge is the staircase for the bridge is intended to be accommodated as part of the existing foundations or footings of an outbuilding that was associated with the previous residential uses. So there's essentially no additional foundations or disturbances being proposed on the site. Next slide, please. In support of the proposed development, there was a very thorough environmental impact assessment that was done. It was completed in consultation with both the GRCA, the City of Kitchener, and the Region of Waterloo. What you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen is the overall mapping, and then what you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen is essentially a zoomed-in depiction of the graphic that was included in the report. You can see the yellow area, that is the GRCA regulation limit. And then you can see a solid green line, which is essentially the surveyed limit of the existing feature. And then that's offset by a dashed green line, which is the drip line and development setback. So as you can see on the picture on the right-hand side, most, if not all, of the parking facility is intended to be accommodated within that disturbed area that was previously disrupted as part of the residential uses, and wholly outside of any impacts or any encroachments into the existing natural feature. Next slide, please. In addition, there was quite an extensive detailed slope stability assessment that was done. It identified the toe of the slope. If you've been out on the site or you know the area, there is a very significant drop off as you move down towards the river. It identified the historical top of slope and then identified the long-term stable slope. So that line work that you see in the magenta, that essentially is the no-touch zone or the top of the stable slope. There was an assessment that was done for the parking facility. In addition, there was also an assessment that was done on the upper tier slope, we've called it, to support some of the proposed building expansion. And again, the parking facility and building expansion has been proposed to be totally and wholly outside of this slope stability area. Next slide, please. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Mr. Seiler touched on it. We are proposing to rezone portions of the site as general employment, and as he touched on, we have no intention of changing the existing natural heritage conservation core natural feature designation. And similarly with the zoning, we're proposing to change it to general industrial with a slightly reduced parking rate and maintaining the existing natural heritage zone on the balance of the property. We are not proposing any changes to that. My last slide, I just want to briefly touch on a number of the comments and questions, issues we've heard from the residents as part of the neighborhood meeting. There were some questions or concerns about potential traffic on Wilson Avenue. Wilson Avenue is the primary access to the existing Colt facility and will remain the primary access to the facility as well as the parking structure. The parking is going to be staggered in the sense that Colt Canada right now is exploring in order to further reduce potential traffic impacts, staggering their shifts, as well as to provide for a more ease and transition of employees coming to and from the site. The natural features and potential impacts on the natural features, we feel that this has been assessed and detailed quite extensively. The parking area is largely within the disturbed area. In addition, the heritage impact assessment and slope stability also recommended restoration efforts on the edge of the where the feature, I guess, will meet the future parking lot. And those recommendations will be implemented as part of a future site plan application. There was concerns about loss of residential dwellings. Both of these houses have been unoccupied for a number of years. The property at 1084 Wilson Ave is quite an older building that has had a number of additions done over the years. And I would suggest it's not in the greatest shape. We did tour that building because I believe that there was some potential questions as to the age of the building. So we were out on site over the summer with staff. That building is not in the greatest shape. 1094 Wilson also has had a number of additions and renovations. The building is quite awkward, and they have deteriorated over time. Safety and privacy, there is a current access over 1036 Wilson Ave, providing access to the residential units to the east of the site. That access is proposed to be maintained, and as part of the site plan application, we will explore additional measures such as fencing, landscaping, and screening to enhance that connection. And then also as part of the site plan application, we'll ensure that we are meeting the city's requirements with regards to potential light and noise pollution. That concludes my presentation this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, thank you very much. There seems to be a few. Councillor Mashore.
Thank you, and thanks for your presentation. This is a peculiar parking lot in the middle of a green space or a natural heritage space. I'm curious as to how this is going to be done without the disruption of that space. Can you explain that, like around the perimeters of where the allowed development is going?
Yes, through you, Chair Singh. So it doesn't depict very clearly on the air photo, but there are two existing driveways that come out to the site that are already disturbed. There, you may have noticed or you may have heard that there have already been some of the removals done on the site. There were some scrubby cedars, trees that were falling down and essentially unsafe to provide for a safer access out onto Wilson Ave. And then there will obviously be measures put in place through the site plan process that will, I suspect, require sediment, erosion control, tree protection, fencing, all of that. So as part of the site plan application process, we assume that the city will have an expectation that we are going to have to provide pretty significant details as to how we're going to protect that edge, protect any of the trees, and make sure that we're not encroaching and or eroding into that natural feature.
Thank you. And one more question. With regards to the parking spaces, that area is used quite significantly by a lot of residents coming from all directions to use the trails out there. And there's a lot of cars that park along the side of the road. Would there be any, or has there been any conversation about allowing for public parking in a part of that space?
Through you, Chair Singh, we haven't had those discussions with the city. The intent of that parking facility is to provide for parking just for the employees. However, it's also our expectation that the city will require some enhancements along Wilson Avenue, whether that be curbing, et cetera. And if it provides some kind of curbing or lay-by for on-street parking, I'm sure that that's something that Colt would be agreeable to, ensuring that we're providing at the request of the city.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have. Thanks so much.
Mr. Chapman.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. My question has to do about the residential dwellings that are there. You said in both cases there would be multiple additions and renovations done on the buildings. How many units would you say are in each of them, or how many bedrooms?
Each of them were, as far as I understood, one family dwelling units. I believe that they both had 3 bedrooms. The unit that I was in, they were very small bedrooms, and the one bedroom did not have a closet, but they were one family units, each of them with 3 bedrooms.
And there were accessory buildings also on the property. What were they used for?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was 2 accessory buildings associated with 1084, and they looked like they were former barns and out facilities. 1084 had quite an extensive, it looked like their private garden that they were using it for, as well as, I believe, storage of riding lawnmowers, etc.
And one of the residents' comments referred to a log wall in one of the buildings. Can you, one of the homes, I guess, can you explain that to us?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That was one of the reasons why we visited the building. We actually had a heritage consultant. Colt hired a heritage consultant and actually met on site with the city's heritage consultant to determine the potential value of that wall. It was buried beneath drywall. We took the drywall off. It had been modified and changed and essentially deteriorated, or the value of it deteriorated over time. Rather than, is it chinking that you normally see in between logs? They had filled it with plaster. Essentially, even from the city's perspective, it had lost most of its heritage value from the extensive renovations and changes that had happened over time.
Was a traffic study done? I mean, it wasn't, was it? I mean, is there a reason why we didn't do a traffic study?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll defer to the city on that in terms of what typically triggers the traffic impact study, but it was our understanding that this type of development and scale of development did not meet the city's minimum requirements for the traffic impact study.
Okay, one last question. How long have the houses been empty?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe a few years, but I would have to confirm exact dates with Colt Canada.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you, Ms. Bearsdale, for your presentation. I have a few questions. So I know there was a concern about lighting in around the proposed parking area. Will there be any increase in lighting along the trail leading up to that parking lot?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there was, so are you referring to the pedestrian bridge or are you referring to the public trail?
The public trail.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe that we are proposing to include any additional lighting along that. I believe that the trail or that extension of Wilson Ave is owned by the city. I'm not, to be honest with you, it gets quite dark, and I would even go so far as to say unsafe down there. Colt Canada has 24-hour security that is frequently down there in the evenings to make sure that everything is remaining safe. I'm not sure if that's the best option, but we would defer to city staff on that. And if there was an opportunity to provide a linkage onto the site, then we would explore that through the site plan process.
Okay, I know there have been some concerns over the number of years, and I worked out in that area for a few years, and there is definitely some illegal activity happening in that area heading down toward the trail. And so, you know, I'm wondering if we could include some lighting, and maybe that's working with the city and Colt to enhance some security in that area and to persuade people not to be in that area doing whatever they're doing in the evening. That's a question and comment. And how many jobs are potentially to be created with the expansion? I'm not sure if you can answer that. Maybe Sean can.
I'm gonna, if I may, I will ask Sean to answer that question if he's able to chime into the conversation or the call at this point.
Thank you.
Hi, and thanks for your question. We're continuing to look at programs for the Canadian Armed Forces and also a multi-year agreement contract for Ukrainian donations with the Canadian Armed Forces. And with those contracts, we're working with the Canadian government now, hoping to add at least 50 jobs in the next short period of time. And then with the expansion, giving us opportunity to further go after additional international customers, specifically in the UK, Norway, Denmark, all on our approved list with the Canadian Armed Forces government.
Okay, thank you. Did you look at any other sites in around Kitchener to relocate, to build a new building, as opposed to adding on to this one?
There were opportunities, I think, looking at. I mean, with this site, I mean that land where those homes were, I think has been mentioned, have been vacant for quite some time, and that planning was done a few years ago when that procurement was done with the intention of expanding the footprint. So since that direction and strategy for the site's been taking place, we haven't changed our direction since then.
If I could add to that, Councillor to know, and I think this was touched on as part of the neighborhood meeting. I believe I touched on it too at the beginning of my presentation. There's quite a significant synergy that happens with Colt Canada being located at this location, given the proximity of the two other munition supply companies. So trying to recreate that circumstance by relocating Colt Canada was also a factor in my understanding in Colt Canada pursuing potential relocation versus expansion on the property. I think the site too, in all honesty, I suspect I did not even know that this site existed until we were asked to become involved. I think the very discreet, almost isolated location of this property also serves Colt Canada and its operations very well.
I agree with you. I had no idea up until about 6 months ago that they existed in Kitchener, which I think is a good thing. My last question is, and I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot here, but is the future of Colt Canada and Kitchener tied to expansion?
Certainly from a Colt Canada perspective, we're now part of a global organization called Colt CZ. So I think in the history we were purchased by Colt US, and then in 2021 merged with CZ out of the Czech Republic. And certainly the intention from the organization is to continue to drive growth. They see Canada as a gem within our organization. We're certainly not the biggest, but the people and the expertise we have here in Kitchener are world class. And the products we make are world class and go to the men and women of our armed forces here in Canada, but also in NATO countries. So at this time, that's how that company views us and is supportive of us expanding and creating more Canadian jobs to serve the greater market that we're trying to expand with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're muted, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Chapman, are you coming in for your second round?
Yeah, I just have a question for Sean, if that's possible.
Sean is actually delegating as well. Sean, do you have a delegation separately as well, or?
No, I'm just here in support of the meeting.
Okay, that's fine then. That's great. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering, well, welcome to the meeting. I was just wondering if you considered relocating or replacing the houses that will be lost.
Not at this time. I mean, the one house that has the barn close to it, I mean, it wasn't in very, very good shape. I think it was mentioned. The other house we're using as a training facility currently for the employees that are online for skills development. We also do, use it for on-site training. So that's what the facility's used for now.
Right, but we're in a housing crisis, so maybe something to think about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kristen and Sean. Thank you for delegating. That's all the questions for you. Next, we have Neil Taylor and Scott McKenzie. Scott, whenever you're ready.
So the chair, we're just trying to get Neil promoted, and they're doing a joint presentation.
Excellent.
Neil, I'm not quite sure, but do you see a message on your screen to request that you be promoted as a panelist?
No,
Yeah, Neil, I think we can hear you.
there. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, you're seeing on the screen only a part of my presentation, so I'd like to go to the part that you had presented to you, I think, through the clerk's office. I want to represent a rationale for the mayor and the council to deny these applications. The public notice given to me and others, along with the sign at the subject properties, was incomplete and misleading. There was no indication to demolish with shortage of housing anywhere. None of that was presented. You're in a different slide area completely, the clerk. Are you in part 5? Madam Clerk?
Good evening, Neil. The presentation that was requested is named presentation number 5. So that was.
Yes, and I want to speak to 1, 2, 3, 4 that was distributed to the members of the committee. So the cold owner has not made it available for occupancy. And so it's very quick for them to say it's not been habitable, but I've referred various people there and that's not been done. The houses were lived in right up until the time Cold acquired them. There's one apartment in the one building that's suitable for student use. The second house has parts that, as I said, it's been alluded to, over 100 years old, and I don't know what the condition. That's fine. There's another structure there that could be made into a student residence. There's been pre-clearing to already between the barn structure up to the current Colt factory. And in my presentation to the council, you would see what the lawn looks like versus a parking lot. There was no reference at all to demolition of buildings. In terms of the Zoom meeting, because the information was incomplete on the notice, I think I was the only person that was a participant. And yet the city of Kitchener talks all the time about engage Kitchener. I wish I could see my own slides to be speaking to this because this is very unfortunate. So the existing policies, you see what they are. You've been told that by the 2 other people there. It's surrounded by natural heritage and residential. And yet, in the justification for this, the company retained to doing that ignored completely the residential properties. They deliberately did that, it seems. And I think that was because they recognized that there's 0 meters between my property and that of the new Colt acquisition. There's a yellow line that indicates that in one of the slides that I sent in part 4. So it is part of a community that was recognized by Mr. Sadler. So I'd like you to go back to slide number 1 in part 5, please. Madam Clerk. So I want that's the existing zones that's been there. Slide 2. You can see there it's incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The area there, the natural heritage is shown very clearly. And go forward. The low-rise residentials. Next slide. So it says it's for employment use, and yet even tonight, I don't hear anything from Colt or from the proponents that there's going to be increased employment from the resulting of this application. Next slide. Again, no mention of in this application. Next slide. Requesting a redesignation on the official plan. No proposal to demolish houses. Next. It doesn't say anywhere in the notice that they're going to have a 3-story enclosed stairway made of glass, probably lit, that will be seen right from several of my windows in my house. Nothing about a glass enclosed pedestrian bridge. And this is supposed to be a public notice. Nothing about significant lighting for the parking area. Next slide. And the city official plan says there has been a small residential community for many decades. I've been there for 50 years. And speaking of safety, this has not been an issue at all for me or the people at 10B and 10D, 1016B and D. Demolition of two community homes is not maintaining this unique community. Next. The city will generally not support changes in land designation. This is your own section. And the change in land use will not achieve this desired purpose. Next slide, please. Only consider expansions to intensification areas compatible with adjacent properties. Adjacent properties are natural heritage and low-rise residential. It's not compatible. Next slide. Supposed to encourage and support the retention of rehabilitation of older houses. Demolition of scarce housing is not maintaining the housing stock. And yet you just passed something about housing stock in another part within a kilometer of here. Next.
Neil, you're past your 5 minutes. I've given you.
Yes, I saw that it was 15 minutes for the other two delegations speaking to on this, and I've timed that here on my own home. No demolition control has been applied for yet. Next slide.
Neil, there were two delegations, but okay, and that's fine. I guess you're delegating together, so I'll give you extra time, but please, if you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. So the lands are zoned to recognize in the existing use, but I can't see the slide because of the photos on the side. The application must be nice since the subsequent use is incompatible with the surrounding use, that is low rise and residential and natural heritage. Next slide. There are more features that are there, and yet in the official plan, again, three natural features are adjacent to the party and supposed to be the most or the more restrictive policy. So I say deny the applications. Next slide, please. All proposals for development, redevelopment, or alteration have to be reviewed in accordance with the official plan. I've seen no review that has been presented from the regional government. Next slide. They will consider acquiring land to protect. And I really suggest that there's a chance here for the city to acquire this land and exchange it for the land that's at the corner that I believe the city owns at the corner of Wabanaki and Wilson, straight north of the subject properties. Next slide. All of the reports are so subjective and so opinionated that they're not worthy of being able to say that they are not worthy of a peer review. Having agencies doing within the arm's length of the city, that's not peer review. They're only commenting agencies. Next slide, please. The official plan for all of these areas, including my own, was just done 2 years ago. The official plan and the zoning bylaw, and it was good at the time. It still is. Its relevance is indisputable, and yet there's being now an application for a change of those official plan and zoning bylaws. Next slide. And it will consider applications for site-specific amendments. Next slide. Well, there's nothing there that there's no site plan to see about conformity with any of these areas. And on top of it, demolition. Again, there's a requirement to demonstrate that the proposal is compatible with the relationship to the adjacent properties. Next slide. Oops, you went too fast.
10 minutes is coming up to an end, so please.
No site plan exists to satisfy the requirements of any of that. Next slide. city will conduct a peer review. I'll pass on this slide. Supposed to do this, have consideration for soil erosion. There is not. Particularly with snow removal. I'm unable to show you, but I have slides to show that the gravel taken last winter, the winters since cold, is right at the edge within a meter, probably centimeters from the edge of the slope. So there's no consideration by this company in terms of erosion. Not only that, they have done some cutting of trees right at the edge, the lip of the very steep bank, and that is supposed to have been protected.
Okay, thank you very much, Neil. We'll look to see if there are questions of your presentation from the committee.
And may I just, Councillor Singh, just say one thing. I invite the committee to take a look at what was sent through the clerk's office to each committee member. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I was going to make that statement later, that there has been a written submission to the committee, members of council, by Neil, yourself. So that's been received. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the questions for both Neil and Scott. Councillor Chapman, go ahead.
Yeah, just I wanted to thank you for your detailed overview of the proposal. Where do you live in relation to this proposal?
I've been living here for 50 years, and the coal factory did not exist when I moved here 50 years ago, this August the 1st. And I have a right of way going right past the coal existing parking lot, and it gives access to 3 homes, 1016A, B, and D, and used to walk down to the other 2 homes when the Himmelmans and Stan Hirons lived there.
But I still don't understand geographic.
I'm
north, south,
directly-
east, and west of.
Yeah, I'm directly east. One of the slides I had showed my house very clearly, but I could not make a presentation properly to the council or the committee because of the PowerPoint, the amount of memory it took up. There was a slide that was given by either Mr. Seiler or whatever that very shows. Maybe he can draw that up for the committee.
So what exactly is your biggest concern?
One, loss of homes, a change of lighting down there between the stairwell and the bridge, this glass. On top of that, well, that will affect my place. But the loss of homes is a travesty to see homes that were lived in up until Colt acquired it to be demolished. And the other big concern is that the public has not been given accurate, transparent information. Nothing was about demolish, nothing about the stair, nothing about the bridge. That's absent. And there's nothing to say that this development is going to bring any more employment to the city of Kitchener.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Michaud.
And thank you, sir, for your presentation again. I'm trying to get a sense, I'm just going to carry on what Councillor Chapman asked. Where is your home in relation to this property? Are you connected to this property or are you further away from it? Because I'm familiar with that area and I only recall there being 2 homes on that property. So are you near that property?
Oh, my property abuts the corner of the closest of the 2 properties, 1094, I think it is. It abuts, if you see my finger, if I could turn my laptop that direction, you can't see it now because of the lack of light, but I can see that barn structure from my living room and my bedroom and my dining room.
So where do you access your property from? From Wabanaki or from Wilson?
Oh, from Wilson. I'm 1016A, and our there's a right of way I don't know whether you're familiar, but it's right. We exit right past the parking lot, the existing parking lot of Colt as it is now. I see their parking
Okay.
people.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And that property, as I said, was a field before Colt built up that, and they've had several additions. Talking about additions.
Thank you, Councillor Michaud. Councillor Deneau, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to, I don't have any questions. I just want to thank Neil for, we've met and we've spoken a few times, and I just want to thank you, Neil, for your passion for this area. You know, I know how important the green spaces in around your area or in around that area are, and I just want to thank you for you know, doing what you feel you need to do and with your passion and your zest. So thank you.
Okay.
I say that really is a first time it could be considered a NIMBY thing, because some council members and the mayor know that I've been involved in other things in the region and within this city.
Thank you, Councillor Deneau. Neil and Scott, that's everyone for you. Thank you so much for presenting. All right, so that takes us through the delegations. I will open up for questions of staff. Councillor Stretch, go ahead.
Thanks. My questions to staff around what we're legally able to advise or to ask of this property. So you know, putting in a parking lot where two homes used to be, around lighting, around stairway access, and how does that work? What are we able to follow through with legally to ask, or do we just are we only left with being able to say, can you please do these things?
Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through the site plan review process, we can evaluate technical aspects of a development proposal. One of the requirements that we often have is a photometric plan. That's where we evaluate light impacts that may be as a result of any lighting that's provided. So in this case, we've heard a need for parking lot lighting to ensure safety. Colt Canada has, we've made the connection with Innova to look at potential street light upgrades along Wilson Avenue. The concern about lighting within the tunnel and the bridge is one that we've heard before, and we've been able to do that with some of our office towers downtown, whether it was timers on lights or motion sensors, so there could be limited light as well. So it's something that we can regulate through the site plan process, but also work with an owner.
Okay, thank you. And I just had a question about, you know, permeable paving options, and if, you know, I guess maybe it's more for a question around Colt, but you know, if we're having to, you know, they already own the land and this is what they're wanting to do with it. What kind of potential do we have to be able to, you know, say, if you do this, can you make these adjustments, or is this just a yes or no scenario?
Through Mr. Chair, I would suggest that the technical details, we do have a development manual as well as urban design policies within our official plan, as well as an urban design manual that we use to provide council direction through the approval of those documents at the site plan stage. So just like we would with any other development application, we would want to review to ensure compatibility. And if there were measures like shields on light standards, for example, or different things to ensure that there's no lighting trespass, we have the ability to do that. We would then secure those plans through a registered development agreement, which would give us the long-term ability to enforce that agreement.
Okay, that's helpful. am getting better at understanding how this works with developments. But I think this is my first parking lot application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stretch. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. My first question has to do with the proposed development that we really don't have much information on. Is it, I don't know what to say. Would it require an official plan amendment or a zoning bylaw amendment? Or do we not know because we don't really know what's being proposed there? Because I think that this is two different projects. We've got a parking lot that we're trying to decide on tonight, but then there's also this other component, this development that we really don't know what it means. Does it require, will it require amendments, etc.?
So I can take that one. So through the chair. So like you mentioned, Councillor Chapman, the application for the official plan amendment is just for those back two properties. The Colt Canada owns those properties, but is wanting to expand, and that will be part of, like I said, the site plan application later on. When they do make the application for the site plan amendment or the site plan update, then for the additional ground floor area, they require more parking as per the bylaw. So they're getting ahead of that by creating the parking lot area so that when they come through for that application for the addition, they don't need to go through the application or a minor variance or anything at that time. They're just getting ahead of that application to include all three properties at once.
Right. So one of the questions that was brought up in the comments from that you had posted online was, could you not do a multi-tiered parking garage rather than a surface parking lot, given that it's as close as it is to the Grand River and the surrounding natural heritage conservation area?
So through the chair, Colt Canada provided the application to us based off of kind of the ground floor or one surface parking lot level. That would be something that if they wanted to explore, or we could give kind of some advisory comments to. But if they did want to come in with the surface level parking application, that's what we've kind of looked at it as it is now. So they could add in that later on if they wanted to look at that opportunity. But for right now, it's just the surface parking lot area that they've shown.
Okay, and we talk a lot about active transportation, and yet here we are building a surface parking lot. Like, how did the two coordinate each other, intersect?
Yeah, so through the chair, with the building addition, they will be required to provide some extra bicycle parking now within the site as well. And I have been in contact with our transportation staff. They have been looking at the options on Wilson Avenue for either a trail connection to go further down the property. That is still in review on their end, so we don't have any specifics on it. I know there were some comments about maybe some additional parking for the kind of the park use down there as well for people who use a trail connection. So that can be something that can be looked at with our transportation staff as well.
Okay. This was rezoned under Crosby in the last 2 years, is that correct?
Yes, so it was zoned through the chair, it was zoned residential at the time, and then it just continued to keep that residential designation through Crosby. So I believe it was either R1 or R2, and then it stayed to Res 1.
Okay, so the last question I have has to do with oh, sorry. I'd have to find it again. So that's good. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That seems to be all the questions for staff. Could I get a mover for this item before we proceed? Mayor Rabinovich, are you moving it, or do you have a question as well or comment?
No, I'm happy to move it, but I saw Councillor Deneau had his hand up, so if he prefers to do it as the ward councillor, I'm happy to have him do it.
Sure, let's him move it. He's a ward councillor. But you're the mayor, you supersede us, but you're being kind to let him. All right.
Always happy to do that. But I will do it when the time comes.
Yes. Can I get comments or other comments? Just raise your hand, everyone. Okay, good, perfect, thank you. I'll just start with Councillor Deneau, go ahead. Or do you want to go last, Councillor Deneau?
I just had a quick question for Mr. Stevenson, then I'll chime back in. I know Mr. Taylor had mentioned that a few slides, it's not compatible with the surrounding land use. And my question is, in your opinion, I know there are a few residential homes, and then there are two that are currently unoccupied. But in my observation, I'm just curious what your opinion is. I think most of that surrounding land use is industrial, and so therefore having an expansion of what they're considering would be compatible with the surrounding land use. Agree, disagree?
You, Mr. Chair. So I agree with the recommendation within the staff report. I think it is important to know that Colt Canada is within lands now that are zoned and designated for an employment use. The building being expanded with additions to the current building not only meets their operational needs, but is a better location for buildings. Mr. Taylor had mentioned from his backyard, he can see an existing structured building that's located within the residential lands that are proposed to be removed. That would be taller than any surface parking lot. And one of the reasons that the parking was relocated to the end of Wilson Avenue was that it was a built form that could be accommodated, wouldn't have any erosion or hydrological risk and pressures, as this is on the top of a cliff and there is a cliff to the Grand River. So when reviewing the development proposals and in early conversations with Colt Canada, we did look at land use compatibility and recommended that, in fact, the parking located in the location where it's proposed now would enable for their existing facility to expand, to have an addition to their building, and then continue to enjoy those synergies with other businesses that cooperate with them. So I know that it may seem like council is being asked to consider a parking lot at this time, but I think it is important to know that that parking is largely parking that's being relocated, and that parking that's being lost is going to be repurposed with employment use in new buildings.
Okay, great. Councillor Chapman, comment?
Actually, I can I just ask one more question of staff?
Yeah, quick one, please, for clarification.
Yeah, in the report, the GRC recommended a deferral. So I just wondered if the what they were asking for has been addressed. Not the deferral, but their concerns, have they been addressed, or what's the status of those?
Yes, so through the chair, GRCA has been going back and forth with the applicant with some revised documents, and the applicant did provide those documents to GRCA and give them some further information. And GRCA seems to be in good favor with that. I had a quick conversation with the member from the GRCA, but I haven't had anything in writing, but I believe that everything that they have is what they need now.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Councillor Chapman, are you keying back in for comments, or that's it for you?
I don't know, I might come back, but right now I'm happy for others to go ahead.
No, I opened it up for comments. So are you making a comment?
Not at this moment.
Okay, all right. Councillor Stretch, comments, please.
Thanks. Yeah, my comment here, I guess I'm leaning towards supporting this application. But I guess my hope would be that I would see Colt be responsible in their approach and collaborative in working with the city to be able to be as innovative and as keep their footprint as small as possible, as well as working along with our lighting concerns on this in good faith. And having heard that they have been generally good neighbors, I am feeling generally positive about that ongoing relationship, and I just wanted to say I really hope to see that continue in a positive manner, and perhaps even exceed our expectations.
Thank you. Mayor Bogdanovich?
Thanks very much, Chair Singh, and thank you to everyone who delegated tonight, both the applicant as well as the residents who articulated some of their concerns. At the end of the day, when I balance, all of the information that we have and consider all of the information, I will definitely be supporting this and urge other members of council to do the same. And I say that based on a number of things. I mean, as a council, we have an obligation always to, when considering in the application, to look at how it meets the objectives that we have as a city, balancing various factors. And having read the report, it would appear that this application certainly does this and has addressed the concerns that both our staff, the region, and as we just heard, and as the report indicates, the GRCA may have had through the process. There's a chunk of work that obviously will get done through the site plan approval process and so on. And I think some of the concerns that have been expressed will be addressed through that. And I know our staff are very diligent in trying to ensure compatibilities between neighbors, as much as they can when this kind of project moves forward. I think, as was pointed out by Councillor Deneau or through his question, this is, notwithstanding that there are still some residential homes there. This is largely an industrial area. I do want to, for the record, correct one piece. The city is not the owner of the land at the corner of, I guess, Wilson and Wabanaki. The piece that is outside of the fence line, i.e. the piece right on the corner, is not owned by ourselves. The city property is further down Wabanaki, all within the fenced area. And so it's not something that we could, for example, even contemplate a trade if that was something even we were inclined to do. I will say that, from a economic development point of view, Colt Canada is a significant manufacturing employer. It is a global brand within our community, but it's also a brand that plays an important role in terms of the safety and security of our community, other communities, and our country. And I think we need to consider that as well, in terms of the role that Colt plays, not only in terms of Canada's defense, but the defense that we undertake collectively with our NATO partners and others. I can tell you that as I've been aware of this company from back in my time as a councillor, when Colt played an important advocacy role in growing as you know, Canada's military is largely based on reservists, and Colt was quite involved with the Canadian Forces Liaison Council, which is a group of employers across the country that supports reservists who serve in Canada's military, and worked with the city of Kitchener at the time in making us a reservist-friendly employer, and also working with other Canadian cities across Canada in becoming reservist-friendly employers as well, in conjunction with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And so I'll just say that, I think all of these pieces are things, in addition to the planning rationale that staff have provided through their professional expertise, is something that we need to consider. And I do hope that we we see our way to supporting this application going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Deneau?
Thank you, Chair, and I want to thank all the delegates. I want to thank staff for bringing the report tonight. And I get it. You know, we are in a housing crunch. You know, but I'm confused how this area was ever deemed residential. It is so far outside the so it's not even close to, you know, a lot of stuff. But it was. And now, you know, Colt owns the land, and they are free to do what they want to do with those two houses, and they want to expand their footprint in Kitchener, and I support that. One of the slides showed that they have 149 full-time jobs. Those are skilled laborers, high skilled laborers, and they're a good employer. They pay above minimum wage. 150 full-time jobs. A lot of places can't say that in our community, let alone wanting to expand their employment. And so, you know, Mr. Condon said 50 jobs, but if the world continues on the way it's going to continue on, they're going to need more and more people. And, you know, we're not... I would rather stuff be made in Canada, and specifically made in Kitchener, to support our people on the ground and defending our freedom. And I don't want to get into the whole military stuff, but I feel confident enough that these people are making stuff that protect our freedoms, that allow us to have this debate, that allow us to have democracy. And so I'm in support of the development. And I look forward to you know, having the increase of jobs for people in our community and outside our community who want to move into Kitchener and have a good paying job with benefits, with pensions. And so I'm in support of this, and yeah, I think I already said I'd like to move the recommendation. And that's all.
All right, thank you. There are no other members that want to speak, so I quickly just add my own. I think both Mayor Rivenovic as well as Councillor Deneau have articulated very clearly the rationale of why the necessity to support this application, aside from the fact that, again, Coal Canada has been a great community partner, a great employer, as well as this is staff reviewed and staff supported report with a rational planning rationale around it. Further to that, I'm surprised that there was a, I guess, affordable housing or housing question related to this because of the loss of 2 homes, which have not been occupied for a number of years, but the fact that they would require demolition. I would just summarize the fact that our road towards affordable housing is also necessary and led by good paying jobs. And Coal Canada does exactly that. It provides employees good jobs and the opportunity in this expansion to create more jobs in our community and in fact help families to afford housing amongst other things in their lives. So in that regard and towards economic development, strongly supportive of this application. Councillor Rivenovic, sorry, Mayor Rivenovic, did you ask for a recorded vote? You cut out before when you were speaking. My apologies. I wasn't sure.
I didn't.
Okay, that's okay. I thought you did, but that's all right. So I'll take the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries, and I was in favor. All right, that item is supported and approved and would lead towards the next upcoming council meeting. All right, that takes us through our agenda items. I guess I'll just take a mover. Go ahead, Mayor Rivenovic.
Sorry, just when we're done planning, if council can stay on for a minute, please. I believe Ms. Fusco wants to talk to us about a non agenda item.
Okay, excellent. Meeting adjourned for planning.